I'm Blaine Carter, and together we're going to be exploring the what, why, and how of open source technologies. This is a quick video on how to deploy the back end for your Oracle CodeCard onto your own always free Oracle Cloud database using Oracle REST Data Services, or ORDS for short. Now I've included some links to a blog post down below that has all of the code that I'm going to go through, so you won't have to pause the video and type all day long, because that's not fun for anybody. And before we get started, there are some prerequisites before we get to this part that you'll need to go complete, and I've also placed the links to the blogs and some videos for these also in the description below. First thing you're going to need is you're going to need an Oracle Autonomous Cloud database set up and available, and the always free version will work just fine. And after that, when you created that, you probably wanted to add that to its own compartment, because it's always nice to keep things neat and tidy and organized. So that's one of the other optional prerequisites, but I've added mine to a demo compartment here. And then after that, you're going to want to, from the details page, you're going to want to go into the service console, which looks like this. Actually, when you pop in, it'll look like that. Switch over to development, and then find this section that says RESTful Services and SOTA, and this big long URL right here. Copy that. You're going to need that later, so put that off in a safe place, and we'll come back to that. The next step is you're going to want to go to this blog post and or the video that I've linked below and walk through the steps on how to disable the fingerprint check on the code card as part of the, and also increase the size of the URI, because we're going to need that to be just a little bit bigger than what we had before. And part of that, as you go through, it will walk you through how to upgrade the drivers so that you can access the ATP ORDS instance that we're about to create. Back when we first set up the code card, the security on the original backend wasn't quite as advanced as the security is on the autonomous databases in the cloud. So that's why you need to do this step to upgrade the driver. All right, once that is done, you're going to want to go to this post here, which is you went to Oracle Open World 2019, got a code card, now what? You won't have to do all of this, but there's also obviously a video to go with that. But as you're going through here, you can skip this fingerprint section right here. You'll still want to set up the Wi-Fi credentials, but you'll replace this fingerprint section with this section with this piece of code here, which this blog that's showing right now, this is the blog that goes with this video. So you'll find this down on step 5, but you'll take that URL that you copied off of the settings page in the development mode. You'll copy it from there. You'll take it from there, and you will add on CC function master, and you're going to set this for button A1, A2, B1, and B2, so they should all look something similar to this when you're done. And so go through the rest of the previous blog post, the now what blog post, and instead of the fingerprints, add in these 4 button settings, and once that's all done, we're ready to get started. Now that the code card's set up and the database is all set up and ready to go, I'm going to use SQL Developer on the web to create all the database objects. There's a couple different ways you can get to SQL Developer on the web. You may have noticed before when we were copying that big long URL from the service console that there was a button in there that said SQL Developer Web. So you can go in there and click on that. Another way is to come into this Tools tab in your database details page and click this Open SQL Developer Web button here, which will open a screen that looks like this, and we'll log in as the admin user that you created back when you created the database, and use the password that you set up for the admin user back then, and hit sign in. And that will bring us to an open worksheet that we can now use to create all of our objects. I'm going to create a new schema to hold the CodeCard objects because the Always Free database has enough room in there to handle more than one project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste in the code. Let me check the zoom there. Looks like we need to make that a little bit bigger. So I'm going to make that a little bigger, slide this down. Let's close that off there. That looks a little better. Might have to scroll a little bit. Actually, one back. There we go. All right. So as you can see, the SQL Developer web tool is adjustable. You can make it to where you're comfortable with everything. And so all this is a standard create user type of command like you've probably done many times before. So we'll create the user code card, give it a super secret password. We will give it some grants so that we can do the stuff we need to do. And then down here, this little piece here, I'll reference this again a little bit later, but basically what this does is this enables ORDS, Oracle REST Data Services, for our new code card schema, and then it gives it a URI piece of CC. So if you remember back when we set the buttons in the prerequisite part of that, it went down to /ords/cc. That CC references this CC. So that's what that is for there. And so that statement is ORDS admin enable schema, fill in the details. Once again, this code is all in the blog post. You can go in there and copy and paste it from there. But I will execute everything in here and let it run down there. You can see all the grants were the user created, altered, grants succeeded, PL SQL completed successfully. All right, so now we've created the user and schema, and we have done the grants and enabled ORDS. At this point, I want to switch over SQL Developer so that I'm not working as admin, because remember, admin is similar to sys or system, and I make mistakes. So I want to switch over to the new schema. And the way that we do that, since we have REST enabled the new code card schema, is if we jump back out to the URI or the URL for the, let's just go to the end there, for the SQL Developer on the web, you'll see right here this part of the URL would match the URL that you copied earlier, /ords/admin, but we don't want to be admin. If we just change that admin to /cc, like we set up when we REST enabled the database, it will pop out and ask us to sign in again. This time we're going to sign in as the new code card schema using that, whoa, that's probably not it, using that super secret password that we made when we created the code card schema, and that will log us, excuse me, you can see we're now logged in as the code card schema that we just created. And when the first time you connect as a new schema, you're going to get this little helpful hints thing that you can go through. You can just close that or you can read through it. But now we are back and connected as the code card schema. First up, we want to create a couple of tables that we're going to use for the back end of the code card that we're going to set up the REST data services to get data into and out of. And so our first table there, let's get rid of that extra, that's probably a tab. I don't use tabs, I don't know where that came from. Anyway, the first table is CodeMaker and the other table is CodeCard. CodeMaker will be used to store the templates that will display on your code card, and CodeCard, the code card table, is the one that when you sign in with the code card designer, it is the one that basically links your code card ID to your name. If you enter a name, you don't really have to, but that's what the two tables are for. So once again, all of this code is in the blog post. Go copy and paste it from there. Don't waste a whole bunch of time trying to type all of this in. I copied and pasted it. So we will put that in there and execute the code, and we created both of our tables. Looks like we're good to go. So on the blog post, about, if you're following along at about this point, just before the section that says define a module, you'll see a link in there that says included below. That is the full completed code. And so what I've done is I've copied that code, pasted it into the worksheet here, and I'm going to walk through a few of the pieces of that code. This is the code that creates the full Oracle REST data service, the ORDS API. And so I'll walk through and just kind of highlight a couple different points that are interesting. At this point, if you wanted, you could just copy that, paste it, and run it, and your API would be up and running. But here we go. We'll look over here. Before we do any of the below stuff, you should know that the current URI that's set up would look like this. There's a bunch of stuff that came with when you copied that URI over from your service console, .oraclecloudapps.com/ords. The /cc was the part that we created back when we REST enabled the CodeCard schema. So that's what it looks like at this point. The next step is we will go in and we define a module. If you're not familiar with Oracle REST Data Services, you can kind of think of as a module. Think of a module as a collection of similar REST services. So kind of think of it as in PL SQL, it would be a package that contains a whole bunch of functions or procedures that are similarly related. And so to create a module, you call ords.defineModule. You're going to give the module a name. This is a pretty name that you can use you'll use to reference it in some of the other functions. By the way, you could just go into the regular SQL developer. There's wizards in there to create ORD services. That's the desktop version. I've done that before, so that's why I'm walking through how to do the PL SQL part this time. So anyway, give it a name, call it functions. This base path matters. This is what's going to be used as part of the URI. So this is going to be /functions/. You can shorten it if you'd like and just make it /f if you wanted to make your URI a little shorter. This is just the default, the way it was originally set up. Items per page doesn't really matter for now, but ORDS has built-in pagination if you're getting records. We'll skip that. Obviously, we want to publish it. We're not going to put any comments. But once that piece of code gets executed, the URI would change to this, similar as it was before, but now it will say /cc/functions. Let me scroll up here a little bit. The next thing we want to do is define a template. Think of a template inside of your module as you would a function or a procedure inside of a PL SQL package. So this is going to be the thing that actually does the work. So we're going to define a template. It's going to belong to that functions module that we just created up above, and we're going to call it master. The rest of the stuff you can look up what it means. There's a link to the documentation in the blog post, so you can go in there if you really like to read. There's all kinds of really good documentation in there. But once we've executed this define template piece, the URI will now look like this, whereas before it ended with functions, now it will end with master. And so that's going to be the complete URI that we're working on. At the beginning of this video, I mentioned it was going to be a quick video. Apparently I lied, so I'm going to cut this first part off here, and I will put a link below for the second half of this video. So in the second half, we will cover how to handle the different methods that are going to be used to call the REST endpoint, and then also how to test it when it's done. So thank you for watching the video, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next part.